Okay, let's dive in. We've got some really fascinating source material today. It's a look at what happens after those super intense high school years.
That's right. We're looking specifically through the eyes of people who went through that grind and, eventually ended up working at Google.
Yeah, and these aren't just like standard career stories. It's more about the journey, right? Especially for folks from really demanding high schoolers, maybe not even in big cities.
Exactly. How those early years, that academic pressure, sort of echoes through their lives and careers, specifically landing them in technical roles or tech-adjacent roles at Google.
And what really grabbed me is that the author writing this, they actually lived it. They described this high school schedule that sounds, well, intense doesn't quite cover it.
Oh, yeah, like 6 a.m. starts, finishing at 10 p.m., maybe one day off every couple of weeks. It sounds incredibly rigorous.
And they mentioned not really thinking about the future back then, maybe being the first in the family to aim for college, even having to figure out basic city stuff when they moved.
That personal angle is, I think, key. It really shapes the whole project. The author isn't trying to say, do this, but more like offer current high schoolers a wider view.
Sharing stories as, what do they call them? Interesting life inspiration fragments.
Exactly. Like raw data points for you, the listener, to chew on.
So this first batch of interviews we're looking at, it's a starting point. These are friends of the author, mostly software developers or in technical sales support at Google.
Right. Based in places like New York, Silicon Valley. And their high school years were roughly, 2006 to 2014?
Yeah, and interestingly, they came from different places too. Big cities, smaller towns, even some from U.S. small towns.
So even though they ended up at a similar place, a major tech company, their starting points were pretty varied.
So our goal here is to really pull out the key insights from these early interviews. Look at their high school memories, how they picked colleges, which sounds messy, what happened right after uni.
And maybe the most interesting part, the advice they'd give their younger selves, with hindsight.
Finding those surprising connections, maybe, the lessons hidden in these stories.
Exactly.
Okay, let's start with high school. Looking back, what was that time really like for them beyond the grades?
Well, the source gives us a few interesting snapshots, like despite the crazy schedule, something like 88% had a crush or were in a relationship.
88%.
After-
That's, wow. Even with all that pressure, teenage life finds a way, huh?
It seems so.
Yeah,
But how do they feel about it?
yeah.
Well, only about half said they neither liked nor disliked it. Sort of neutral.
Okay.
But one person who went to school in a U.S. small town actually called it chaotic and difficult,
Mm-hmm.
mostly because of relationship stress. So not always smooth sailing emotionally.
And what stuck with them? What were the most vivid memories?
This is where it gets really interesting. Only about a third even mentioned studying is the most memorable thing.
Seriously?
Yeah. Most remembered other stuff. Friday basketball games,
Hmm.
dealing with relationship drama or friend issues.
Mm-hmm.
Won't even mention playing in a band.
Wow. So in these places, often defined by academics, the things that really lasted were outside the classroom. That says a lot.
It really does. About connection, experience.
Yeah.
Oh, and there was a slight difference for those in U.S. high schools. About a fifth of them didn't have a romantic relationship, which contrasts a bit with the overall group.
And did they say what happened with those high school crushes later on?
Mostly lost touch,
Hmm.
not close contact. But they generally knew the basics, where they are now, if they're married, that sort of thing.
Okay.
And kind of sweetly, two-thirds said they still felt fondly about the past connection, wished them well.
That's nice to hear. Okay, so from high school, the big leap is college.
Yeah.
How did this group navigate that choice, especially coming from such structured places?
Well, the source uses words like confusion and random events to describe it for many of them.
Confusion and random events, like what?
Well, they give examples, like someone filling out the application form wrong and just ending up somewhere unexpected,
Oh.
or getting advised by a teacher on how to fill the form and ending up in their least liked major because of it, or, just doing what everyone else was doing.
So not always a grand strategic plan then.
Not always,
Yeah.
no. But there were practical reasons, too. Some chose based on saving money or location was important, or they were thinking about jobs already, or just aiming for the highest-ranked major their scores allowed.
And looking at the majors they actually studied, it wasn't all computer science, even though many ended up at Google.
Not at all. Only about a third did CS. The list included math, Japanese, psychology, history, atmospheric science, all sorts.
That's crucial, right? It shows there isn't just one path into tech. Why such variety in majors, did they say?
Well, different factors. Job prospects were common, yeah.
Yeah.
but also chasing that prestige, getting into the best major based on scores, or sometimes just picking something that sounded, well, fun.
Fun. Imagine that. So, okay, they get into college, often through a bit of a random walk. What was college life actually like compared to what they expected?
For most, very different,
Mm.
significantly different.
How so?
They mentioned things like, it wasn't necessarily everyone playing super wild, as they put it, or it wasn't always this like purely open intellectual playground where everyone's just soaking up knowledge 24/7.
Right, managing expectations there.
And also, just because a university had tough entrance requirements like high scores didn't automatically mean everyone there was a top student in, every single way.
That's a good reality check. But you mentioned a contrast for some.
Yeah, for those who came from high schools that were maybe more academically focused, more closed off, they actually found college surprisingly full of other stuff like debate clubs, drama societies, things they hadn't had access to before.
Ah, so an opening up of possibilities for them.
Right. But on the flip side, some also felt college was way more rushed than they thought it would be, maybe carrying over that high school intensity.
Could be. Okay, so they get through college. What happened right after graduation? Did they all jump into tech jobs?
Not exactly.
Hmm.
About a quarter went straight to work, sometimes because, well, tuition's expensive.
Yeah.
But about half actually went overseas for grad school, often because they genuinely like the academic side of things.
Interesting split. And how did their first jobs line up with those varied majors they took?
Only about half. So yeah, some CS grads became software engineers. That makes sense. But for the other half, their first proper job was often in something totally unrelated to their degree.
Okay, that really highlights the nonlinear thing. Even for people landing at Google eventually, the path from major to first job wasn't always direct. Speaks to maybe skills learned outside the classroom or just adaptability.
Absolutely. Adaptability, maybe picking things up along the way.
Yeah.
The journey wasn't a straight line for many.
Right. Now, for the part I find really fascinating, the time machine advice. If they could go back, what would they tell their younger selves? Let's start with high school then.
The advice is really diverse and quite personal, Some is about comfort, perspective, like it's not a big deal, youth is short, develop more hobbies.
That's huge, telling your stressed out high school self it's not a big deal.
Or just, it's good, just keep going. Simple reassurance.
And in this one, grades, just keep them mid to upper. Coming from that intense background, that's a radical shift. Suggests grades maybe don't matter quite as much long term as you think they do in the moment.
Definitely. Others encourage just living more. Live it up. Shine even brighter. And thinking broader than books. Reading isn't necessarily better than traveling. Valuing experience.
I like that. Any practical advice pop up?
Yeah. One bit was, make things clear before leaving, moving on. Sounds like maybe some unresolved personal stuff lingered,
Yeah, that rings true for transitions.
And there was a reality check, too. Tempering expectations about life after the grind. Regardless of good university, if you want to advance in life, you'll face effort similar to or harder than high school.
Oof. So the hard work doesn't just stop.
Apparently not. And then specific regrets or things they wished they'd prioritized. Choose your major carefully.
Yeah.
And a very human one. Less staying up late, more time with your girlfriend.
Huh. Okay, what about advice for their college selves?
There's a strong theme of encouragement there, and also, like, seizing the moment.
Yeah, things like, you are much stronger than you think, and believe there are people who love you. That hints at maybe some tough times, mentally or emotionally.
Could be. And very practical, forward-looking stuff, too. Go intern. Participate in overseas exchange. Things they wish they'd done.
Or almost the opposite advice. Pushing back against just studying. Stop studying, go make money, or go out and have fun more, work less.
Right. It shows that tension, doesn't it? Between buckling down academically and, well, getting real-world experience or just enjoying that unique time. The advice to live every minute because this is your last carefree time, that's pretty powerful.
Definitely. And permission again for relationships. You're young, you can date more.
There were also some warnings, lessons learned the hard way, it seems. Keep training in debate. Logical thinking and empathy are lifelong assets. That's interesting.
Harry. And a really stark one. No one is worth sacrificing your health for.
Yeah, that one hits hard. Makes you wonder about the pressures, maybe relationship pressures or academic ones, during those years. And just basic good advice. Develop exercise habits early.
So simple, but so important. Now, this set of interviews, it's just the beginning of a bigger project, right?
That's right. The author has this ambitious goal. Interview 50 people. Diverse people, different regions, majors, jobs, even countries they ended up in, all before this year's big college entrance exam.
To create a, what do they call it, a very diverse, independent life story data set.
Yeah. And they're really clear about what they won't do with it. They don't want to add their own take or process the stories or tell people what to do or give, self-important advice.
Why not? That seems unusual.
Their reasoning is pretty powerful, I think. They basically trust that high schoolers today are independent thinkers. They believe that by just providing the raw stories, unfiltered, students will find their own insights, their own personalized gains, and make choices that fit them.
It's about empowering the listener, not directing them. That's quite refreshing.
It is. And the source mentions, these first interviews are a bit raw, basic audio, unedited, first-time interviewer, people sharing different amounts of detail.
Right, and asking us to remember these are just individual perspectives,
Yeah.
snapshots in time, not the whole truth for everyone.
Exactly. Respect it's just one person's view at that moment.
So, wrapping this up, the big picture seems to be that life after intense high school isn't this neat straight line.
Yeah,
Not at all.
definitely not. It's messy. It's full of twists, turns, uncertainties. Even for people who, made it to a place like Google, the paths are often really nonlinear.
And hearing these different stories unfiltered, it just reinforces that there's no magic formula. The value is seeing the real process of figuring things out.
Yeah, the messy reality.
The author finished this piece with a quote from one interviewee that just perfectly sums it all up, I think.
Yeah, it's a great one. Really captures the spirit of it. It goes something like, you don't necessarily have to be a good, obedient child.
Mhm.
Life after the college entrance exam isn't about who is more obedient, nor do you have to find a perfect career life path from the start. Life is long. Taking detours of 1, 2, 3, or 4 years isn't a big deal.
That takes so much pressure off right there.
It does. And it continues. As long as you have enough determination and are willing to put in your full effort, even a big detour can be turned around. But if possible, under controlled risk. Please try many different paths, whether you thought of them or not.
Try many different paths.
Although you might not find a career lifestyle you like, you can at least eliminate what you dislike.
Wow. Eliminating what you dislike as a valid outcome of trying things, that reframes detours completely. They're not failures, they're beta gathering. They're experiments.
Exactly. Building resilience, clarifying what you actually value, even if it's by figuring out what you don't want. It encourages thinking about your life as, an exploration, not a single test you have to ace first time.
So maybe the final thought for you listening is this. How could thinking about your own choices, whether you're starting out or further along, more like a series of explorations, of controlled experiments, rather than a search for one perfect path? How might that change things?
Yeah, what's one small detour? Maybe something just outside your usual path, but, with controlled risk that you might try, just based on that idea of exploring and learning, even from things that don't work out perfectly.
It's a really powerful way to think about navigating life. Thanks so much for digging into these sources with us today. Really fascinating stuff.